Joining me now in the studio is Douglas Yates, a political scientist and Africa specialist from the American Graduate School of Paris. Douglas, thank you for coming in and great to see you again. So the big question is, will these elections be free and fair? Especially as I mentioned, following that civil war, the whole region of Tigray has been excluded from this vote.
Well, they might be free and fair in the capital city, but in whole swaths of the country, people are simply unable to vote. There's the war-torn region in Tigray, there's the Amhara region. I'm speaking just officially. Many bureaus of vote are simply not open. That's what the government is talking about. But having said that, there are going to be opposition seats because the ruling party, the Progress Party, has stepped down in many districts, which will prevent a 100% ruling party parliament, which looks terrible. So there will be opposition parties in parliament, and where that exists, there is some hope.
Now, I happened to be in Addis Ababa when the Prime Minister was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2019. I was doing a report for the 51%. And there was a lot of talk of optimism at that point because he won the prize for bringing an end to that 20-year military stalemate with its neighbour Eritrea. 7 years on, it's a very different story in the country, isn't it, Douglas?
Yeah, so of course there's the usure of pouvoir. There's the corruption that comes with wielding power. But it's also important to understand the circumstances because Abiy Ahmed has been opposed by Isaias Afwerki in Eritrea, that is, who supported the rebellion in Tigray, who supported the rebellion in Amhara, and who supported the rebellion in Abiy Ahmed's own region, Oromia. And so he's been involved in kind of a secret war with Eritrea because Isaias Afwerki has always had the ambition of becoming the new emperor of a unified Ethiopia under Eritrean rule.
So when people go to cast their votes, what will be their most pressing concerns?
First of all, inflation. Although the war is extremely important, they're not being asked to vote on war, and the projected winner won the Nobel Peace Prize. It's inflation. They're being hit terribly. There's great growth in the country. It's one of the most rapidly growing economies in Africa, but the distribution of that growth is terrible. Per capita is about 1,200 per year, which isn't bad. It's gone up from about 600 a decade ago, but inflation is 11-12%. And so that eats up all economies and makes just basic subsidies hard. People have a hard time finding a meal to eat. They're going to vote with their belly.
And when you fly into Addis Ababa, the level of construction and new builds is amazing. And obviously the government at the moment is working very hard to make the airport the hub, if you like, for the region, hoping to pick up from the what we've been seeing in the Middle East and getting extra flights to come through Addis Ababa instead. But there is a disconnect, isn't there, between that extraordinary level of investment, much of it from the Chinese, to what is actually being trickling down to other parts of the population.
It's interesting how you mentioned China because we see the same thing in China, where the big cities bring in all of the growth and the wealth, and out in the countryside you have grandparents babysitting their grandchildren in rural poverty. Ethiopia has massive rural poverty, and until they solve the war, they won't redistribute wealth. But once they solve the conflict, Abiy Ahmed will be able to redistribute this growth. And I think a lot of people who are voting for the ruling party, Prosperity, are banking on that.
So what could change after these elections?
Well, these elections are about continuity, but the first thing will be perhaps recognizing the TPLF, which has been banned as an active party because it had been a coalition partner. Might also, once they have some opposition, invite some people onto his cabinet already, as they have from the OLF, from the Oromia region, and be able to maybe assuage some of the fears that the Oromia people have, who are increasingly calling for independence, that Abiy Ahmed has betrayed them. So those would be two possible gains. The rest, he's pushing fast forward on his development program, which is centered on the highlands, on Amhara.
And there's the corridor project, the so-called corridor project, which is very contentious, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you see, his hope, I think, when he had solved the war with Eritrea was Ethiopia, which is temporarily landlocked, would get its port back. But he hadn't counted on Isaias Afewerki being a dishonest dealer. And so he's gone the way of Djibouti, towards, and if you will, the old line that famous poets had worked upon in the early 20th century. And that corridor has big backing from everyone. And there was a recent study called Realpolitik that was published with Cambridge University Press, like Realpolitik, about train projects. Some countries they've succeeded, some they've failed, and Ethiopia is an example of a success story. So is Kenya. Failure, Angola.
Thank you so much, Douglas Yates from the American Graduate School of Paris, talking to us about the Ethiopian elections.
Thank you, Annette.